Welcome, guys. My name is Tara, and this right here is my usual partner in crime for these events, but today he is presenting, Mike Spakowski. We are co-chairs of St. Louis Design Week with AIGA and also partners in crime at Atomicdust during the daytime. Bright and Early is a free monthly breakfast lecture series that is brought to the creative community to inspire not only a community, but also an outlet to hear the inspirational stories of the good things that are coming out of our city. Every month we are sponsored by our sponsors at Strange Donut and Goshen Coffee, so a round of applause to our sponsors. And today's speaker, Mike Spakowski, after 15 years of starting Atomicdust, Mike is the partner and creative director at Atomicdust, and he is still actively involved day to day in not only the design strategy, art direction, but he's also the general hype man around the office. In addition to being founder and creative director at Atomicdust, he has also been on the board for AIGA St. Louis for the past 3 years. And without further ado, today, Mike will be talking about, I don't want to mess this up, so let me get this right here. He'll be discussing his thoughts on the design process, business, and life in general. In his talk, Sweating Through Your Blazer and Other Life Lessons from Inside the Creative Industry. Without further ado, I introduce my friend and partner in crime, Mike Spakowski.
Well, thank you, Tara Nesbitt. It's weird being up here, because usually I'm sitting in the back just hoping everything goes all right. This is a picture of my blazer, although it's not really a real picture, Bill. Hi, this is Sweating Through Your Blazer, another lessons from inside the creative industry, thoughts on design, business, and a little life in general, because to me they all kind of blur together. I'm Mike Spakowski. I'm partner at Atomicdust. I'm founder, I am a dad, I'm on the board for Design Week, I am a terrible husband. These are all jokes. But really, I'm an enthusiastic young man, right? Like, I just try stuff and see what happens, and I think that's cool, you know, and it keeps me going. I was freaking out over this talk idea today. Tara and I have been doing this for like 2 years now, and we always have like people, and we're like, hey, come, you should do it bright and early, and it'll be awesome, and you just do it, and you know, you can talk about anything you want. But like when it was my turn, which I've been dreading, it's like you can talk about anything, and I'm like, well, well, I can talk, I'm fine with that, but like usually I talk about something or a topic or something. I just can't make up stuff. So like I think like design needs constraint, you know, like I'm better when there's like guardrails, and I'm better with projects when there's like sacred things I can't touch, and I think constraint makes things easier. And like a lot of times when people talk about creativity, they're like, oh, you can do anything. And that's usually where I panic, like I need some kind of ground. So I didn't know what to talk about today. A lot of times when people don't know what to talk about, they tell like this origin story, you know, where like I had nothing, and then like I started to get something, and now I'm really successful. And that's not really like my stories, but I also didn't want to like, I hate to plug myself or my work or my company, which is weird. But anyway, so I had to do this thing for AIGA where I had to tell a story to new board members about myself in 5 slides. So I was just recycling these 5 slides. So this is the first slide. This is my hair in its natural, lovely, flowing state at home. This is what my wife and children see, and that's why they're scared of me. But anyway, this is my Instagram pictures. Have you ever seen that little tiny thing? This is the zoomed in. So enjoy. I'm from Florissant, and I went to high school in Florissant, and then I didn't know what I was going to do in life, so I went to St. Louis Community College. And I never took an art class since probably like the 5th grade, you know, and so I needed an art credit. So my 2 options for like intro art without any kind of background was either nude figure drawing featuring some of the senior citizens from the nursing home across the highway, or I could take computer-aided graphic design. Right? Computer-aided graphic design, not just old graphic design. This got computers. So I was excited because I didn't know anything about computers and I didn't know anything about graphic design, but I was trying to avoid this, you know. Now, hold still. This is in the highest resolution. It's disturbing. Good morning. Okay, so I took computer-aided graphic design, and I sat and I learned Adobe Illustrator, and we're only allowed to use the pen tool. All other tools are stupid and dumb, and if you can figure out the pen tool, you can figure out everything. So I did it for like a semester, and we had like make a fake wine label and read this page of a book and now illustrate what it's about and all these like weird projects. But I was hooked. I just thought it was fun, so I wanted to continue to do it, even though the class was over and it was summertime. So I was like, hey, I had one friend that knew about computers. Computers weren't like popular. They were like my one basement friend's like, oh yeah, I got one. So like I was like, I'm gonna buy a Mac and learn, and get Adobe stuff. He's like, no, buy a PC because you can still get Adobe, but there's also these things called video games. And I was like, well, I like video games, so I would spend half my time like I was a line cook at like the pasta house. Pasta house company, woohoo! Anyway, so I was a line cook, and then I spent my free time that summer like jamming out on making stuff in Adobe Illustrator, and then eventually I kind of learned Photoshop, although if you ask people I work with, I don't know Photoshop. But I'd play like video games, and so I would beat these games, and I'd go to my friend, and I'm like, hey, do you have any more games? Because I don't have any money, and it would be cool if you just give me one. He's like, no, just play on the internet. And I'm like, what's that? But it was like 1998, 97, 98. I'm actually 85 years old. Okay. Anyway, so it was new, and like he showed me that I could play online, and there wasn't like millions of people online. There's like thousands, right? And I would play these games against these same dudes for months, and these guys had these things called websites. They were making these things called websites, and they could code, but they didn't know how to make like buttons or logos or anything like that. So like me and my friend James and Taylor, hey James, we would sit around and we'd make like download the map buttons and send it to them over the internet, and then they would put them on their website. We thought it was cool. So eventually, I got good at computers, right? But computers break. So I got good at fixing computers. And I left my cook job, and I got this like dream job at like MasterCard, and I was like working at their like at a help desk, walking people through how to fix their computers, their software, whatever. But after like a couple months, it got really repetitive, like taking the same, how do I print? And like you just knew. So I'd sit there, and like everything was locked down. And so I bought this book called Instant HTML, and I learned the art of tables. And in image maps, and I think they're coming back. Anyway, so I would sit there and I'd take calls, but I'd really I'd make these little these web things, and I'd save them all, a folder on my desktop I'd call Atomicdust. And I thought it was like, it reminded me of like Razorfish, or any of those cool like weird 90s names that sounded more like bands than companies. So I thought it was cool, so I'd save all my stuff in that folder. Well, eventually, we Moonlit for about 4 years on top of that. Me and James and Taylor and my friend Jim would make stuff for ourselves and for little clients. And we had day jobs, and eventually we quit our day jobs. And so at the ripe age of 24, I started Atomicdust full time with my friends, and we still didn't have any clients. But anyway, so there's us. But the internet was new, and like all these ad agencies in town would hire us to make their websites and stuff, because like they would give us these giant 11 by 17 Quark files and say, make this an email. And you're like, okay. So we'd just try. And so now, sorry, coffee. Oh. So now not only have I multiplied physically, but I also have children. So anyway, so now I eventually got married and have 3 kids and a stuffed dog. So, but now I spend my days at work, and the company's grown, and we're in our 15th year doing it. And we do far more than just websites, although that was really our root, and we still do a lot of websites, but we do brand identity, and we do marketing, and we do strategy, and we do communications and promotions and all kinds of things that like design is really useful for. So I get to hang out with like really talented people all day. This is an old picture, and some of these guys don't work here anymore, but I'm always lucky because like I got to work with some of these really awesome people. So this is like a typical day. We sit around and we look at stuff. We're like, is this good? I don't know. Let's move it. Well, let's tweak it. Let's try. And then in the mornings, I started doing this probably 2 years ago, but I get up every day at like 5:30, and I write for like 2 hours, even though some days I just stare in front of a blank screen because I don't know what the hell I'm going to write. But like it's awesome, and it's like the best part of my day because it's like a little me time, and you can just sit and like make stuff. And so I enjoy writing and trying to breathe. The RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan, whether I went to school or not, I would always study. And I think, sorry, I'm always trying to learn about like business and design and life and improvement and push stuff and try. So I love this quote. In the Wu-Tang Clan, but during this talk, I was searching for this theme, and I'm like, what am I going to talk about? And I just don't want to be about this, like, like every little detail of then we got the client, then we got successful, because it's not that linear, it never really is. So I think like I was watching these documentaries. This guy named Hillman Curtis, you guys, anyone ever hear of Hillman Curtis? Check out Hillman Curtis. Hillman Curtis is awesome. He actually recently passed. But he made all these wonderful videos over the last probably decade, and they were like interviews with like Stefan Sagmeister, and interviews with like Michael Beirut, and interviews with like Pentagram, and they would expose me to things that I would never have access to, and it was really cool to like hear these stories from people. But he did this one documentary about himself, and he said that his theme for the last 10 years has really been about reinvention. So I was trying to think like, what's my theme been? And usually it's a lot of complaining. I'm always like bitching about design or business or life or like trying new stuff and trying to make stuff work or trying to get ideas in the world. And so I like the idea of the struggle, right? You guys know these guys? So this is Charles and Ray Eames. Designer, painter, architect, furniture maker, filmmaker, toy maker, just brilliant, pioneers of this industry. They have this line that says, take your pleasure seriously and never let the blood show, right? Which means that like it is important to play and experiment and think and have downtime and learn and do all that stuff. And then it's also important to like make it look effortless, like ta-da, and look how wonderful. Oh, of course I came. Oh, it was an easy thing to do, And so, but to me, like I think it should be more like never let all the blood show. Right? Because like in this industry, nowadays, everything's so pixel perfect wonderful that you never really hear any stories of like struggle or trying or like, we did this thing and then they hated it, which is great. So my first piece of advice today is you should avoid public speaking. It's true. This is proof. This is real. They say that like in nature, like when you're out in like the woods and there's more than 6 pairs of eyes on you, like you feel like you're gonna be eaten. And that's like public speaking, and that's why people freak out. It's a natural reaction. So I gave this speech one time years ago and I was terrified because it was this really ridiculous idea that we had that was just silly. Just the silliest, stupidest idea. I'll show you this video. And then I had to present it to this like most conservative, suited out, like organization in the world, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. They're gonna know I'm just faking it, and I panicked. Can we play the first video, John? So utterly ridiculous, right? And we did it, and it was us, and there was some friends of ours, and then the news showed up, So like Fox 2's there, and I'm like, yes, it's you put your face on the glass, and and then the mayor showed up, and you're like, hey, and so then this organization asked me to come present this idea of new ideas in fundraising. And I'm like, okay, so get a copier and a bunch of toner, and then just go for it. So it was silly, and I was terrified. And so throughout the entire speech, nobody knew it, but I wanted to bail. I'm like, oh my God, I got to get out of here. This is ridiculous. And I sweated through my blazer, right? It's like I was pounding water, and it was terrible. And I constantly sweat anyway because I'm just a gross person. But how unprofessional, you never hear stories of people saying that. I shouldn't tell anybody that, that should be this, oh, well, that's fine, just play it off. But no, it was gut-wrenching, and I was mortified. But that's why I think it's important to share that stuff. I think flaws make people relatable, right? So I have this line that all designers hate each other until they don't. right? And I think it's true. Like, I mean, not like this mean hate, but like you look at other people's work and you're like, oh my God, what's up, Mayor? You look at people's work and you're like, oh my God, it's beautiful, or like, they're so successful, or they win awards, or you go to like art show or like award shows and you're like, oh, they get all the cool clients, or they have money, or they have like talented people, or they use the same font on everything. And you're like, you're just mad, and like, and I think like you never get to hear like the stories of like, we did it and then the client hated it. Or we tried 7 things and like then we got fired. Or you only see like this beautiful end result with the shiny award next to it. You never like get to hear the stories. And so I'm lucky. I talk to a lot of designers. We just bitch about life, and it's like we get to hear like I get to build some empathy, right? So I hate them less. I still hate them, but just less. It's like it's understanding hate. And I think in our industry we have like these. Like a typical, it's all pixel perfect. And typical industry case studies are like, the client came to us with this impossible to solve problem. So immediately we totally solved it. And it was great and easy. And we won all awards, and we are rich, and we are sore from high-fiving each other. But like this is never my world. Like my world's like, what are we gonna do? And let's freak out and let's try stuff and let's futz and play, and they hated it or they loved it, or it's never like this thing. Like the first 5 years of Atomicdust, like we started and we were just a bunch of designers. We like to make stuff. It was cool to make stuff. And so like we'd look at like shops down the street and shops around the country, and you're like, why do they have clients and how do they have all this cool stuff? And like, we're better than they are, which is just my opinion. But then it's like, why don't we have like all this stuff? And so like, this is like our first office on Washington and 18th Street. That's my giant head. So like I think like for the first 5 years I'm like, what the hell are we doing wrong? So I started to try to learn, and back then like every book about the industry was really based on like the ad industry stuff. So it was like be enthusiastic and pitch your work, and how to make a killer presentation, and like how to get a client, keep them forever, and all this stuff. And like none of this stuff was really like ever worked for us, or like it wasn't us. It like wasn't a good fit, and we thought we were kind of crazy. I think like you inherit industry dogma. Like you guys quit your jobs today and start your own shop, you will operate the same way as your current shop. You'll bill by the hour, and you'll get estimates, and you'll pitch, or whatever you like originally learned, like you'll just do, because that's like what you think it is. But like we never had any other industry jobs. We just made it up. So like we could like pick and choose like what worked and what didn't. And we didn't know any better. And it wasn't until we started to like break some of our own rules that we learned we can do our own thing. So we started to try to invent like what's the best way a client can approach us, and what's the best way to work, and like how can we build that adds value for them but's fair to us, and how can we not log time. But you laugh, but it's totally doable, And I think that's the thing. Like, so now I like to talk about this stuff and the stuff we struggled with, and I talk about it a lot. And if you ever meet me, I only really talk about work and business and terrible failures. But I think all people, all firms, and all shops struggle with like new business and project management and money. And it's not just like St. Louis. I think I go to I have this thing called Owner Camp every year or so, and it's like all these firm owners from around the globe, and they all work at these giant places, and it's all very impressive. And they sit around the table, and the first day it's like, well, we have all this money and billing and blah, blah, blah. And then the second day after everybody knows each other, it's like, how do you guys get clients? And you're like, whoa. So I think like everybody has the same problems. So like maybe I could help. Maybe if I say like, well, yeah, we don't know what we're doing, or hey, we changed the rules, or like we did our own thing and it worked, marginally for us. Maybe like other people would like think that they could do stuff. And I think like maybe like naively, maybe it'll make it better for like the industry. Like maybe I won't seem so crazy to clients when I'm like, oh yeah, it's this giant flat fee, and then we do this steps and all this stuff. If other people start to do it too. So I just try to share like my story. Or maybe all this stuff that is existing, like billable hours and estimates and pitching, that works for you, and that's cool too. I just think it's important that people know that like you can like change stuff and break the rules. And I think design, and when everyone thinks of design, they think it's like visuals, but it's like it's a way to take the current situation and make it a more favorable one. So you can apply that to like your life and business and work and any situation. Like what's the desired outcome, and how the hell are we ever going to get there? The rules are yours to break. There's this awesome movie called The Royal Tenenbaums. Everyone's seen this movie, right? Royal's worried that his grandkids are growing up too sheltered. So he calls his son and he's like, you know, those boys need some recklessness in them. And he goes, well, they're taking karate classes. He goes, I'm not talking about dance lessons. I'm talking about putting a brick through the other guy's windshield. I'm talking about taking it out and chopping it up. And then there's like this reckless montage of like shoplifting and throwing eggs at cars. And it's sort of that rebellion. And like, I love that spirit of it. I think you can apply it to life. I always wanted to build a company I wanted to work at, right? Like, I used to have these terrible jobs. I mean, I was lucky to have them and they were great jobs, but like looking back, I'm like, oh my God. But I would sit in a cube all day and I would take customer service calls. And you guys know Marcus Etter? Anybody know Marcus Etter? Yeah. So I used to work with him at this same, I have a picture of Marcus, but I didn't show. But anyway, so that's how I met him in these cubes. And like, this was the job where if you were more than 5 minutes late twice a week, you're fired. You had 30 minutes for lunch, and if you take longer than 30 minutes more than twice a week, you're fired. Just don't show up. It was like fear, and like you had a man in your phone, and every minute of your day was tracked. It was very efficient and very like calculated. And I sat with people that worked there for like 20 years, and they had cubes decorated like their house. You know, look how great my cube. And you're like, oh my God, you're giving up. You know, so I just had to like get out of there. Because to me, like, it's like life is like, you know, work is a lot of like your life is work. And like culture to me is bigger than just like pets and beer in the office, right? I think it's like, it's about like people trying to go like the same way and people like wanting to do the same things, even though it may seem crazy or stupid or reckless. Can you play the second video, John? So this is like one of my favorite clips when I think about my management style, which is lackadaisy. But it's a little dark. A little dark, yeah. But I'm a big Monty Python fan. Some of you guys will know this. But it's pretty much like, well, here it is.
Don't stand there, Corbin! Like you've never seen the undercut before! Now, today we're going to do marching up and down the square!
I feel like him.
That is, unless any of you got anything better to do. Well, anyone got anything they'd rather be doing than marching up and down the square? Yes, Atkinson. What would you rather be doing, Atkinson?
Well, to be quite honest, Sarge, I'd rather be at home with the wife and kids.
Would you now?
Yes, Sarge.
Right, off you go. Now, everybody else happy with my little plan of marching up and down the square a bit?
Sarge,
Yes.
I've got a book I'd quite like to read.
Right, you go read your book then. Now, everybody else quite content to join in with my little scheme of marching up and down the square? Sarge? Yes, Wycliffe, what is it?
Well, I'm learning the piano.
Learning the piano?
Yes, Sarge.
And I suppose you want to go and practice, eh? Marching up and down the square, not good enough for you, eh?
Well,
Right, off you go. Now, what about the rest of you? Rather be at the pictures, I suppose. All right, off you go. Bloody army, I don't know where it's coming to. Right, Sergeant Major marching up and down the square. Left, right, left.
Democracy and humanitarianism have always been trademarks of the British Army.
Rubbish!
So you just want to find people that like want to do the same shit. You can't pay anybody to be like, oh yeah, get excited. Like they're either excited or they're not excited, and that's my management tips from Monty Python. I also have that hat. No, I don't. I don't have that. John, oh, we're back. We're back. Projects and people. Like, I love projects and I love people, and it's like projects are cool, but like projects always have a beginning and there's always an ending, and like they're never done because you like work on 10 things at once, you know, and like it's never like this. But to me, it's like it's the process of like working with cool people. So I've worked with, and I have worked with some really talented people, and I've been really lucky, and my reputation is built on a lot of their work, which is selfish but cool, and So anyway, thank you. But we try to have values and principles, and we don't take on everything that comes in the door. We say no to a lot of clients and a lot of projects. We talk about everything. We over process every decision, and we meet as a group and we talk about improvement, and we tweak and argue and fight, and but we all try. We try for better stuff. So this is how typical, in my description, I'm like, oh yeah, I said I was going to talk about the design process, and this is a lot about the design process. We have a framework of things we do, but with everything, the idea of show the struggle with every little piece. We argue and we write and we look over each other's shoulders and we tweak and we push and we interview people and we do research and we scramble and we work late the night before the meeting, and we hang out and we talk shit on each other, and we take and we steal ideas and we panic and we celebrate and we bang our heads against the wall and we lose and we win, but we all do it together. This is a perspective. This is the best joke in the entire. So we are far from perfect. I'll give you guys a second to take that in. I get it. But principles aren't principles until they cost you money, as a business consultant told me this one time. Principles aren't principles until they cost you money. We must have a lot of principles. A lot. We have a shit ton of principles. But in business and life and design and all this stuff, there's good and there's bad, and there's good and there's bad, and there's good and there's bad. And a lot of times, when things are good, you're like, oh, things will always be good. Or when things are bad, you're like, things will always be bad. But it's just never true. It's it's this sort of balance, and it's this sort of flow. So the best advice is just try to hang out in the middle and be happy. You should, but I learned to appreciate the journey, right? Because it's always ups and downs and new projects and projects starting and projects ending and people and just life in general. So you gotta kind of appreciate stuff. And you gotta realize in our industry, our worst day is someone else's dream day. My arguments at work aren't about life and death. It's about the client wants a drop shadow on that type. No. It's okay. But it's serious. It's important, but it's not that serious. So our worst day is someone else's dream day. So when things are good, I like to pause and appreciate it. A lot of times at work, I'll grab Jesse, one of my partners, and I'm like, dude, let's go on a walk. And he's like, what's up? What's wrong? And I'm like, nothing. Everything is fine. Let's just think about that. Everything's cool, just for a minute or a day. So you gotta appreciate stuff. When things are bad, you just gotta keep going. Don't stop and waller and think, oh my God, things will never be good again. You just gotta keep pushing and trying. There's this, speaking of pushing, this looks like an adult novel. But it's not. It's not. So this is a book about Chiat Day. It's called Inventing Desire. They used to have Apple. I think they still have Apple. They had Apple. They lost Apple. They had Apple. So there's a picture of that. Anyway, so this is a book about Chiat Day from the year 1989 to 1990. And it's an entire year of their life, right? Of everybody in the company and all the struggle and drama. They went from winning Agency of the Decade to the next year losing 3 of their biggest clients and having to close one of their offices, right? This book was written 20 years ago, 30 years, it was years ago. And you can learn a lot from. I read this book a couple years ago, and it was it's you just see your own life in it. And they struggle with stuff should we be specialists, or why are we order takers, and the client doesn't respect us, and all we have is hours, and should we pitch work or not pitch? It's just the same stuff, but we don't really take a lot of time to learn stuff. At least I try to learn stuff. I try to remember heroes, right, and heroines. Sorry, Jazzy, I don't have any. Jazzy, my friend, pointed out that I don't have any women in here, and that's not intentional. It's crunch for time. But you should remember your heroes. There's so many great designers that have come before us that we could learn from if we stop binge watching seasons of Netflix every night. And a lot of the problems we face have been solved already. Charles Eames, you guys know Charles Eames? I kind of already talked about him. But anyway, Charles Eames, he was known for furniture, right? So I've read books and I've read documentaries, and I've come to the conclusion that after 20 years, he really hated to make furniture. I think he just got sick of it. And I don't know if this is factual. This is just my opinion. But I think You guys know about like side hustles? Like everyone, this big hip thing, oh, you should have a side hustle, like this thing you're interested in. His side hustle was really about like making toys, and he made little films, and he used all the money for his furniture to like to fund his interests. And he had his whole company that just made cool shit they wanted to. And then when they ran out of money, they released a new chair. You know, and this is just my theory, but like reading it, you start to piece it together. But he never really told the struggle, so I don't really know. You know, I just heard, oh, look at the beautiful stuff we make. So I'm just making it up for my presentation. Charles Eames got kicked out of WashU. Let's talk about that. Like, this is according to Wikipedia, right? Because this is just legend. But I was so excited when I found this. So after 2 years of study, he left the university. Many sources claim that he was dismissed for his advocacy of Frank Lloyd Wright and his interest in modern architects. The university reportedly dropped him because of his too modern views. This is the coolest shit in the world. I mean, this is like my jam. It's like you got Charles Eames, who's a fan of Frank Lloyd Wright, which was like a madman of building things, and then gets kicked out of this local prestigious educational center for like following, you know, one of the most renowned art. It's everything. This whole slide. If anyone ever wants to make me a poster, anyway. This is all according to Wikipedia, so I don't know. But you know, there's this thing like you should always, when there's two stories in front of you, you should go with the legend. So this is a good legend. Bill Byrne, who was an ad guy from like the 40s, right, 1940. He knows my future, right? Like I read about the struggles that he had. I'm like, oh my God, I could totally see myself in this. Our agency is getting big, and that's something to be happy about, but it's something to worry about too, I don't mind telling you, and I'm damn worried. I'm worried that we're going to fall into the trap of bigness, that we're going to worship technique instead of substance, that we're going to follow history instead of making it. If we are to advance, we must emerge as a distinctive personality. We must develop our own philosophy and not have the advertising philosophy of others imposed on us. Let us blaze new trails. Let us prove to the world that good taste, good art, good writing can be good selling. He wrote that in 1940. You know, and today, like, design is so like templated and commoditized, and like clients assume we work a certain way. Well, I need 3 rounds of revisions, and it's all by the hour, and this is how. And it's like. This is like the challenge to like, you don't have to do that stuff. And I think it's cool. I'm glad he wrote it, because I'm sure he was freaking out at the time, but it's good to like learn from people's struggles. Internet is like how am I doing on time, Tara? Yeah. Internet's like this box of history. Like Saul Bass has these great documentaries about making money versus doing good work. Like when you should, like what project is worth your effort. You know, it's great. You should really check it out. Paul Rand is a crotchety legend. He's like the just greatest designer, but the harshest business person. Like Paul Rand totally punked Steve Jobs. Like Steve Jobs hired him for $100,000 to make a logo for Next. Steve Jobs is like, oh yeah, I just want to see a couple options. He's like, no, I will give you one option, and you will pay me for it. And if you don't want to use it, you don't have to. I mean, learn from that. That's awesome. It wasn't like, that'll take me 10,000 hours. You know, I'll give you one thing. And that's great. So, but like when you know about this stuff, like you have your own panel of experts. You could draw on stuff. You know, you could say like, what would these guys do? And it's like you have your own advice. And some of these guys you might know by reputation. And I think like that's what's cool about design. And I think reputation is really everything. Last summer, 2 summers ago, I met this. You guys ever heard of a shop called Teehan and Lax? And I think it's in Canada. Anyway, they made Medium.com. You guys know Medium? Yeah. Okay. So John Lax was the founding partner, and he went on to work as the head of design for Facebook. But he had his agency, and his philosophy was, we can make enough money, but we can never have enough reputation. So every day I get to work, and I'm like, have I built a reputation? And I think about the same thing. So tell the struggle. But why? Because everything's cool. What's a better story? The guy who's born rich and dies rich, or the guy who's born poor and dies rich? There's a lot more stuff that happens in this second one. But it doesn't rap music. rap music's all about the struggle. There's two types. There's like party rap, you know? I listen to like a ton of rap. Or there's like, I had nothing and now I'm a millionaire and I'm gonna talk about having nothing and how I got up there. And like, those are the people like you root for. You don't mind that they have billions of dollars because you know that like they tried. And I think like if they just talked about, oh, I have billions of dollars because I was born with billions of dollars, like, it's not that interesting of a song. So I also think, so I'm almost done here, but if you show that you love something, others will love it too. Like a lot of times you make stuff in the world and you're like, oh yeah, so am I done? Is this cool? You know, but like, you have to be like, I really love this thing. So we're working on this project for this new bar in town, and I wrote this blog post about like how excited I was about the concept, you know, and like, I didn't think anything of it, but I try to write every day, so sometimes I just write whatever. And but I think that got other people excited about it. So sometimes the struggle isn't just negative. It's just like, here's what I want to do, and here's what I think is cool, and you should share stuff. So I'm about done here, but so things we learned today. You should show some blood if you're a bleeder. Break the rules once in a while. Try to learn from the past, and then if you have big enough ideas, you can sweat through almost anything. Anyway, that's all I have. Thank you.